John will have to give you a thumbs up. John, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
John Dextrace.
Oh,
The pack,
Sorry,
the J.
sorry.
The pack J.
John, are you
Yeah.
ready to start recording? John Dextrace.
He's
John Dextrace, report to
Hello.
the principal's office. John Dextrace, report.
We're
Oh, there
good,
he is,
Joe.
there.
We're
There,
good.
there
We're
it
good.
is.
We're good. We're good.
Okay.
Go, go,
Good.
go.
All right. Not exactly a clean start, but a start nonetheless. Thank you to PAC for helping to facilitate this. My name is Peter Beardmore. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Lunenburg Finance Committee. It is 7:01 p.m. On Thursday, September 24th. Our Chairman, Terry Birchfield, is unavailable this evening. So with that, as Vice Chairman, I will call the meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance of the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread of, and all town facilities, I believe they're not currently closed to the public, but are open on a limited basis. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting will broadcast live through local access cable, on Facebook Live, and on the public access Facebook page, and will be available to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after the meeting. The following information is also provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link provided in the published agenda for this meeting. It is a Zoom meeting. Zoom ID is 8425-770-5023, or from a telephone by dialing 888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID 8425-770-5023 and then pound. Note, participant ID is needed, then just press the pound when asked. No participant ID is needed, just press pound when asked. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Okay, with no further ado, are there any announcements? Okay. Yes, raise hand for Dave Passios.
sorry about that
Passios.
last second. This is kind of announcement slash public comment, but I'd like to get it in at the beginning of the meeting. As I've mentioned before, in my raising in Lunenburg, I and the people of my generation were raised by a village, and I am sad to announce that another member of that village passed away overnight. Her name was Joyce Downey. She was on faculty at Fitchburg State College, now called Fitchburg State University, and was a very active parent during my school years, and raised, I believe, 3 or 4 children through the school system. So my condolences go out to the Downey family at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to public comment. Is there any public comment from the board first? Okay, hearing none. I don't see any members of the public, but there could be. I'll just give a moment for public comment from the public. Okay, hearing none and seeing no hands raised, we will move to Town Manager, Finance Director reports. Mrs. Lemieux.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
So let's see, where do we start?
Welcome back.
Was I gone?
Well, you weren't at a cup. I think you were missing.
Yeah, we missed it a couple
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
One maybe.
Yeah.
This one. Mhm. Just some updates on some grant information that we're applying for. We're applying for the Community Compact IT grant. Steve Melandrino says that would be for IT infrastructure at the schools for remote learning instruction. That's an award up to $200,000. So thank you, Steve, for applying for that.
Do you know what the timeline on that is, Heather?
They're due by October 15th. I'm not sure when the award is. It's usually within a month or so, I think, but I can look at that when
Okay.
we were last received because we applied for that previously and got one. The interim police chief is applying for a JAG grant, which is a justice assistance grant for body cameras. And that grant request is for $36,400. And that would outfit the department and with the required software. I applied for a Brownfields Redevelopment Fund grant for 925 Mass Ave. That for the maximum for $250,000. That would be for remediation of any contamination at that site.
Is that the gas station property, Heather?
Yes.
Okay.
In other announcements, do you want me to go over? I have a draft of what the special town meeting articles that we've received so far. If you want to go through those.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
If the committee agrees, I'd say let's get it out there.
Okay.
Sure.
Yep.
So if you can,
Do you want to make you host or something? Is that
sure, and that way I can pull it up.
Sure.
Thank you.
okay? You should have it.
Okay. Why isn't it? Start here. Okay, we'll start with, because I'll have to pull it up. It didn't come up on my screens, but we'll start with the proposed budget changes first, because that will tie into one of the articles on the special town meeting. So on the revenue side, we have a new estimate for our new growth, which changes the new growth from 173,400 to 250,000. So an additional 76,600. On the expenditure side, as announced previously, there was a reduction to our July premium, both on the town and school side, and those estimates are 50,000 on the town side and 118,000 on the school side. To add in the additional police officer for starting January 1st, and as well as the additional firefighter starting January 1st. For the police officer would be 30,161. For the firefighter would be 38,928. The additional hours for the Board of Health that were deferred at town meeting for the other remainder of the year after starting January 1 be 3,816. The deferred capital minus the trackless piece of equipment, because that's going to be paid out of Chapter 90 funds. That total is $494,333. We had deferred ADA public rights of way improvements for $27,000. OPEB trust fund deposit in amount of $110,000. I plugged in a number for the school. I've been discussing with the superintendent and business manager what their needs will be, for the remainder of the year. So that's just a plugged in number to offset the health insurance number at this point. We also received recently our state assessments and charges, and based on what we used for estimates at the annual town meeting, this would be a reduction on the expenditure side by $45,931. So that still leaves an available amount to raise and appropriate of $524,718.
That's after all that's said and done, there's still 524,718.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, let's see.
On the school department line, Heather, well, is it appropriate to ask questions now, or do you have more to show that might bring additional light to some of this?
Do you want to go back to that other screen? I was going to go through the articles next.
Yeah, if we could stick to the budget for just a second. Specific to the schools, that 118 plugged in number, where would that bring them in relation to where they were, at like the 2.5% increase, which is more or less where we were prior to the COVID bomb blowing up in March?
I would have to look back at the final number. It was 192, I think, but most of it was salary reserve that was cut. So let me see in the sheet. Yeah, 192 was what was.
Okay. And obviously they've settled their teacher contract, but that settlement, was basic. It was very nominal in terms of an increase.
Yeah, because it was based on what they had.
Right. It was based on available funds. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think my only, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is I think that there needs to be some kind of flag put on that saying, because obviously there's going to be a renegotiation next year, and we can't pretend that 2020 didn't happen. So there needs to be some accounting for that. Or 2021 fiscally, I guess.
Yeah, I think we've got to take into account all the other available funds that we've received because of COVID, though, as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Both on the town and school side.
So that brings up another topic that I do want to cover in some more detail under reports. But, there have been a tremendous amount of changes, in particular in the school department, in terms of particularly their personnel and how they're dealing with hybrid and administrating and protecting and all the various things that they're doing. Mm-hmm. They did provide a personnel update and a budget update, but in his letter, the budget and personnel director,
Mr. Cassidy.
Mr. Cassidy, I'm sorry, I was drawing a blank on his name, so thank you.
I know, it's all right.
Indicated that he is going to bring a budget line transfer request to the school committee at a subsequent meeting. And so, depending upon what happens there, I do think that we need a fairly thorough look at what's going on in terms of in budget year adjustments. Just, from an oversight duty perspective, I feel duty bound that we do take a look at that at some point.
So how they're moving their monies from one line item to another in the school department? Right.
Just so that we know and understand it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that would be more appropriate for the superintendent to come to you.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to preempt the school committee, but I just want to kind of lay down the groundwork, and perhaps in your discussions with the superintendent, Heather, we can, set that up. So when they are ready to do those transfers, hopefully it comes at a time where we understand what's happening with the budget in the current fiscal year before we have to make recommendations on town meeting appropriations, I guess is where I'm getting, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah. So I would recommend then asking if they could come to your next meeting.
Is that the timing? Would that be the the appropriate time?
Well,
I
you
think so.
two more, you have October 8th and October 15th is the public hearing. So unless you want to wait, I mean, there are other meetings after that before a special town meeting. But.
Right. No, but we'd ideally want to get them in before the public hearing. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
So,
I have two questions so far. So on the grants on the police body cameras, do you have an estimate of what it costs to actually store all the video that those cameras produce? Because what I've heard is that the camera cost becomes much less than the actual storage of, terabytes of data.
I can find out from the interim chief. I don't have that.
And then the second question became, and maybe that needs to just get wrapped into the general improvements in IT and storage, et cetera. But the second question I had was, do you have the breakdown of the capital request additions, the 494? I know it was not deferred, but I don't have the whole list.
What the projects were?
yeah,
Um,
I can't remember.
If we can
I've got
come
them in a
back to that
town meeting
later, I can
file
give it to
somewhere.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we come back to that later?
Yeah, that's fine. Even if you want to just send it off to us after the meeting or point us to
Sure.
it, that's fine too. I was
Yeah,
just
that way
wanted to
is-
look
yeah.
at it.
Heather, are you at a point where you're able to comment on the body camera stuff? Is this an intent that the police department wants to pursue? Do we need to look at this and perhaps fund it in advance of a grant being awarded and then clean it up later? Is this something that we're going to be able to discuss prior to town meeting?
I don't think it's imminent that we need to do it by special town meeting. I think it's imminent eventually that it, from what my conversations with the interim police chief is that it will probably become mandatory eventually. So, but that's not likely they're not going to mandate that now and expect us to get it in 2 months.
So my thought on this, which I outlined in an email to you a month or two ago, and you did respond that you would discuss this with the chief, is I don't view this as a compliance event. I view this as a resiliency and risk management investment that, given the current social conditions that we're observing on a national level, it's in everybody's best interest to do this and to consider prioritizing it. Police officers are being provoked, and I think it's in everyone's best interest to get what's really happening out there on the record should we need it. And when there are available funds that we could perhaps direct toward additional capital and accelerating that program, I'm speaking as a citizen, not a finance committee member here, but I think that that's something that you and our police chief needs to hear, even if it's just me saying it.
No, I agree, Peter. This is in the best interest of the police officers. It's a protection, a safety for them to have the body cam on them. It's very important.
Mhm.
I agree with that 100%. Because it does, it shows. It would be interesting to see what it would show in times where they could possibly be provoked, and you'd want to have that for the town as well should something happen.
Yeah, and I'm also sensitive to the fact that this isn't just a capital cost. There's operational costs associated with this.
Right.
There needs to be policy put in place. That policy needs to be vetted. I mean, there's more to it than buying cameras.
Right.
But I personally feel like the events of the last several months have changed the environment in a way that it's just fundamentally different from the last time this committee discussed this with then Chief Marino back in late February. So for whatever that's worth.
Were there any other questions on that? Do you want me to move on to the articles?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. So the first article is to amend this year's budget. So that's our typical.
Heather, we're still looking at your
Yeah, we
dashboard
don't-
sheet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
All right. So Article A, they're all lettered right now. Article A is the fiscal 21 budget amendment article. Article B is the amendment to the capital plan for the deferred projects. Article C is, we always put this article on about payment of prior year expenses. There are none right now. D is to transfer funds to the stabilization fund, the regular stabilization fund. E is to transfer funds to the special purpose stabilization fund. F is to transfer funds into the OPEB trust fund, which we deferred at the annual town meeting. G and H are for the union negotiations for the clerical and the fire units. So we're still in negotiations right now with both those units, but we hope to conclude those soon. The letter I is for the PEG, the capital fund. They didn't have enough funds in their enterprise at the time of town meeting. Now they do that so they can transfer into their for their capital line. J is for the sewer commission, is to transfer those funds into their reserve capacity stabilization fund. K is for premium from bonds that were issued that can be paid towards capital.
Could you explain that, Heather?
Karen would be the one to explain that. She
Okay.
submitted it. Basically, I'm not going to explain it correctly and in her terms, but when we issued bonds in the spring, when we went out for that funding, there were premiums reserved that we're able to use towards capital.
Okay.
L is amendments to the salary administration plan to add the position of intermittent heavy equipment operator as well as the principal assessor position. Both were approved by the personnel committee, and this is just following the SAP bylaw that it gets voted on at the next available town meeting to put it into the grid. M is for the purchase of 250 Howard Street. So this is a first right of refusal property. I don't know if anyone's been watching the selectmen's meeting and other meetings that have discussed this, as well as conservation and open space. So there's two articles that relate to that property. One is a generic article. The second article discusses a donation. So the Open Space Committee and Conservation have been in discussions with the people who are looking to purchase this land to donate a piece of 250 Howard Street for conservation purposes. So
Where is that in the process, Heather, in terms of, because I recall not this week, but the previous, I haven't watched this week's selectmen's meeting, but the week before there was some discussion on this topic. Are the selectmen at a point where they're making a recommendation on that, or is that further down the line?
Earliest it would be the October 6th meeting. That will be on our agenda again on October 6th.
Okay.
Peter, there was a good discussion at Open Space on this, where it seemed like there was a path to a good win-win solution with the purchasers. So that's, if you can look at that video from a couple days ago, you'd get a very good understanding of where they are on it.
Great. Thank you.
O is for the tax increment financing agreement with Bright Farms. If you've been watching any of that discussion, with Bright Farms is a major greenhouse grower. They're looking to build a facility behind Hannaford's and Walmart. So they've been going to the various boards, planning, conservation, and they'll be coming back to the selectmen. This is tentatively back on our agenda for October 6th.
So is
There's
this
no
is this true financing, or is this some sort of tax incentive?
it's a tax increment agreement. So the existing property, what it's taxed at now, that value would still come to the town. It's what's added on top of that of what they invest. So tax increment financing agreements can be anywhere from 5 to 20 years. And it's as you go along in the years. So say they're only taxed at 90% in year one, it goes down incrementally until it's fully taxed. And that allows them to make that investment, add jobs, and such.
Thank you.
Welcome. The letter P is for the TCP Building Design Committee. They wish to do a report at the special town meeting presentation on where they're at. Q and R were added today by the Conservation Commission. They would like to see 111 Mulpus Road Brook. Sorry, and the second one is that's the wrong address, obviously. I think it's 690. I can tell you in 1 second.
New West Townsend Road, wasn't it, Heather?
It's 970 Northwest Townsend Road Rear. It's the second one. So those are two properties that are currently under the care and custody of the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, as we're not called. They are not called. And so it would transfer that to conservation. And S is this amendment to the stormwater bylaw. And that's 16 pages of text. So I'm sure you don't want to go through that.
Oh. Is it the stormwater task force that's
No,
bringing
this
that
is
forward?
through the planning board.
Okay.
Any questions? Dave has his hand raised.
Dave?
Yep, thank you. Heather, what's going to happen with the streetlight article that was passed over at Springtown meeting? I expected that would come back up for special town meeting, but so far I don't see it.
Dave Blatt emailed me today that he was looking for the deadline because he was going to submit an article.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I have one question. I forget which number made me think of it, but has PAC or cable equipment, staff, or IT needs, based on all this Zooming we're doing, do they need additional budget to kind of carry out the rest of the year?
Within the PAC enterprise budget?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how there's operational costs. It seems like there's a lot more folks helping to get Zoom meetings started. There's equipment cost, maybe additional Zoom accounts, just general IT needs based on all these meetings and everything else that are going on this way.
We've been able, any costs associated with COVID, we've been able to pay for through the CARES Act. So CARES Act funding, that's until December 31st. So beyond that, there may be potential cost. Nothing that's been brought to my attention besides the position for the remote meeting coordinator that was just approved.
That's
So
cool, yeah.
that's pretty minimal. I think the most it would probably be $8,000 to $10,000.
Okay.
So that would be absorbed under some existing line.
Right.
The intent, though, is that that position, the school department is picking that up and seeking CARES reimbursement until the end of the year, and then that goes to the town. Is that the agreement, or?
It would have to be budgeted for the remainder of the year, and it would be
Okay.
part of the school budget. But it would be, so that's something, part of that 118 that I plugged that we're gonna have to figure out as far as.
Okay. Okay. That was not my understanding of the way that it was presented by the superintendent and Mr. Cassidy at the 2 school committee meetings that it was discussed last week. I
It's a
really,
shared
at the end of
position.
I understand it's a shared position, and it probably
Yeah.
doesn't really matter where the money is flowing through. But my interpretation of it at the time was that the school department would pick up through the calendar year, and then the town would pick up the other side. And I may have misunderstood it.
Yeah, it's not really, they're not picking up the first half of the year because that's CARES Act funding that's actually coming to the town, not the school directly. So it's all, the first half of the year is being paid for out of CARES Act funding.
Okay.
Peter,
Another
quick
Yeah,
question, if I could throw it in, kind of expanding on Chris's question about IT. Alongside what needs to be done for the short term with our needs for a Zoom and the schools and so on and so forth, are we also still exploring and developing what's going to be needed for meetings going forward for a combination of in-person and remote participation? I foresee this as, and Peter has brought this up before, I think that's going to be our new normal, probably forever, at least a very long time. So I'm hoping we're working on that infrastructure, or at least plans for that infrastructure, and we're not going to be scrambling a week before we go back to face-to-face meetings to try to make it work. And the costs associated with that, where that money's going to come from.
The town hall meeting room, that infrastructure is in place. They finished that project and it has been tested and it seemed to work. And so it would be in addition to other rooms, but this school, I don't know if that's something that grant, if we receive that could be go towards that cost as well.
So, out of curiosity, Heather, do you know if the infrastructure and the plan for the town hall meeting space has been presented or discussed publicly, just as a way of setting expectations? Is this something that the Board of Selectmen at least has heard and looked at?
I've talked to them about it, that it was going in. Yeah. So we could do hybrid type meetings. Yeah.
Okay. It just
Is that what
strikes
you're
me as
asking?
something whereas we're all going to be living in this, there ought to be some level of expectation setting and oversight on the part of the public, and that the plan and the expectations should not be kept to our paid staff at this point. I think this is something that's worth discussing more broadly.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is a way going forward when we resume whatever normal looks like, that these kind of meetings would attract more people who travel frequently and are able to zoom in on a frequent basis.
That's going to be driven by what the state does, though, for open meeting law. I mean, we've been given this reprieve because there was an executive order because of the state of emergency that it could be fully remote. So if it were a situation where majority or your board wasn't present in what used to be, it wouldn't have been allowed. So it's also going to be driven by the state.
Why wouldn't it have been allowed? We've had people calling into meetings.
It was allowed if there was a majority present in person.
Actually, a quorum present
Quorum.
in person.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that we shouldn't be doing it, as I advocated for back in February. I think we should be planning for that eventuality. And I'd just like to know that we are, and that the plan is sufficient, I guess is what I'm getting to. With respect to the IT spending, I raised the issue at the school committee meeting last Wednesday, and I was going to bring this during committee reports, but I think it's relevant to this discussion. And I had an email interaction with the superintendent following that meeting to talk about my concerns about live instruction from classrooms being streamed to students who are operating remotely. And the superintendent has indicated to me privately that this is a work in progress. They're trying to figure out essentially what they need, and to what degree they need it. And then we'll come back with some sort of commentary and plan about this. But they were, effectively not ready to provide a comprehensive answer when I asked the question. The reason why I think it's particularly important right now is because there are 3 months left in the calendar year where we can apply CARES Act money, which is still available and fairly substantial, as I understand it, in terms of our allocation of CARES Act money. And there is, an opportunity at town meeting, should we decide to go the route of a capital request, to go that route as well. And so, I understand that we're getting closer and closer in to special town meeting. I think, I understand that there's grants being applied for, but, we're going to have to be thinking about this in terms of the prospects of grants, the availability of CARES Act money, and making sure that we're communicative about how we're going to do this if we're going to do it. And to date, I don't think anybody's kind of laid this out in totality, because I understand that Mr. Malandrinos and the superintendent and yourself are still trying to figure it out. But I'm also sensitive to where we're at in the calendar and the expiration of some of these available funds.
I think what would be helpful is looking back when they've announced the IT grant and knowing that time frame where it ties into town meeting and the use of CARES Act money.
And the availability of the funds as well. I mean, the grant source me, I don't, I have no idea where that money comes from. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
Go over let me screen share the capital. So this is showing all the projects, but so the ones in column T were part of the annual town meeting. So what remains is the police vehicle, one marked replacement for $67,000. The track list, like I said, is being paid out of Chapter 90 funds. So it's all the projects from the 1-ton dump truck down are the remaining projects.
Mhm.
Can everyone see that fine?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather, capital planning decided that they'll take this up at our next meeting, if I remember correctly, and just vote a recommendation for town meeting. Do I remember that properly?
Did they? Let me see. They were gonna look at the status of, present, the remainder of fiscal 21 projects. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and then
on October 20th.
right, and then capital planning committee policies also will be discussed that night. Okay.
Heather, it's assuming for a moment that, we're still going to have a substantial amount of excess available funds when this is all said and done, and we're not going to need, a substantial amount more from that money for IT needs or school department needs or what have you. Would your intention be to kind of leave that as unallocated and roll that money into a future year for capital plans as free cash? Is that?
At this point, I can't say definitively, but I would say I'd be more inclined to put those monies into stabilization.
Okay. It's hard to argue with.
And in the sheet I showed you with the adjustments, there were no figures plugged in for
Right.
stabilization.
Okay. Anything else on your report?
Nope, that's
Heather?
all for tonight.
Any other questions for the town manager relative to her report?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Heather, could you give me back control?
Yes. Yep.
So next item is minutes. There was quite a bit of email traffic today on minutes. First thing first, I reported incorrectly about the 6:11 minutes, which I then redistributed today once Heather called my oversight on having not recirculated those minutes. So if those minutes are something that the committee would care to vote on tonight, I think that would be good, but we could roll them as well. But Heather has also submitted minutes for July 23rd and August 13th. Any discussion on minutes?
And they are all on the OneDrive in the minutes to be reviewed document folder that Chris created today.
Okay. And I do want to have a discussion about that in a moment, but if we can approve what we have
Okay.
and then discussion about administration of minutes, I think that's in order.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Mr. Sorry, go ahead, Heather.
oh no, that's all right. That's all right, Mr. Passio.
Mr. Patrick.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things, and I'm trying to make sure that it's in the August 13th minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 pages a minute, so this should be the correct one. I didn't staple them together, so I'm not sure, but the size of the print matches. Excuse me. Let's see. There's just a word issue that I starred. No, trying to get organized here now because my papers got all shuffled up. On what is page 2 of my printed copy, at the end of the paragraph, just before Peter's presentation on school committee, I'd like something inserted in there just before he will not bring anything as a member of the FinCom committee to the TCP committee. I'd like added in there that the chair did ask if anybody wanted to make a motion for the committee to instruct me to bring a report to TC Passios rather than it appearing that I refused to take any information. There was actually a request for a motion and no motion was put on the floor. I mean, it doesn't have to be extensive, but just something that states that the chair entertained a motion and no motion was made.
Dave, I'm looking at page 2 of August 13th, and I'm not seeing what you're referring to. So maybe this is another
Okay.
page that you've got out of order.
Well,
it's
the way
not-
it printed, actually, the way it printed out through my printer, for some reason, the bottom of every page is cut off. So it may be maybe that or something else happened in the printing. Do you see the section where you're footnoted your name, Peter, and then it says school committee because you started your school committee?
Yeah. Okay.
report
So that's
immediately
actually
after
on
me.
page 5. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to share my screen just to
Okay,
make
then
this
things got shuffled in
a
the
little more
stack here.
obvious.
There's no page numbers printed, so.
So no worries. This is hard to do remotely. So if everybody just pardon me to go on a screen share here, it would be right around here. We would make some kind of insert. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Somewhere in the, just ahead of the last sentence of that previous paragraph or somewhere, something right there. I did state that I could not bring anything to the TCP committee unless there is a vote. And then immediately after that was
Right.
when the chair entertained a motion and no motion was put on the floor.
Okay. Any comments on that or anything else relative to the minutes?
Nope, I got it.
Okay.
Other than that edit, I would move to approve as amended.
Are you
If that's
approving?
appropriate.
Are you moving to approve just the August 13th, Dave, or all three?
Yeah, I'd like to take them separately, please.
Okay. So there's a motion to approve the minutes from August 13th. Is there a second?
I will second that. John? I'll
John
second it.
Henshaw seconds. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Henshaw,
Aye.
Mr. Menard,
Aye.
Mrs. Soroka,
Aye.
Mr. Passios,
Aye.
and Jay Simone.
Aye.
Jay, you got to say your name so I can hear it and pronounce it many times over.
Simeone.
Simeone. I gotta
Yes.
put a sticky on my screen
Sticky
with
note.
it pronounced out because I'll never remember how to say it.
4 syllables.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, to add to the confusion, on my screen, J. Simeone appears as Galaxy 510E.
Well, and that's not helpful.
Yeah, I'm on my cell phone. I'm on my
Okay.
cell phone. Right.
Not helpful. Yeah, I know. Okay, we're glad to
Peter,
have
you
you.
can change that.
Well,
I know I can. I
On the
can.
phone?
No, I can do it here. Actually,
Oh, you can do it?
there's a way to do it. Simeone.
E-O-N-E. E-O-N-E.
You are hereby renamed.
Thank you.
Good suggestion, Chris. Okay.
That's why we can't annoy the speaker, the chairman.
Any it's not that I don't know the spelling, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the pronunciation that I can never remember. Any other motions or discussion on minutes, either from June 11th or from July 23rd?
So I'd make a motion that we approve the July 23rd minutes.
Could I interject something? I'll second, but I'd like further discussion for just a second.
Motion is seconded. Any discussion, Mr. Passios?
Yeah, under committee appointments, discussion 1200 to 5200.
Yep.
Okay. Unofficially Parks and Cemetery. is not sitting on parks as a commissioner. There's a disconnect in the sentence right after cemetery, I believe, in the words or verbiage.
Is that the new one that's on the drive?
Let's see. I printed this at about 4:00 this afternoon, I believe.
So the bullet says that I'm reading, which is not from the drive, it's from my email, was unofficially Parks and Cemetery is not sitting on Parks as a commission and would like to stay on as a liaison. So this is referring to you, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. Somehow that didn't register correctly in my mind, but if you're good with it, my brain will come around to it eventually.
It makes sense to me.
Okay, that's fine.
That's exactly what you said, Dave. I just typed out exactly what you said. Okay.
That's
so
fine.
if it does, that's exactly verbatim. Got it?
Heather, I never remember exactly what I said.
But I'm doing it by the videos.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. So sometimes it's you guys are verbatim on there. So if you don't like the way it's worded, it's coming out of your mouth that way. Okay. I'm just going to call you on all of that.
Any other discussion on the meetings from July 23rd? Hearing none, I will call a vote. Mr. Henshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Menard.
Aye.
Mrs. Soroka.
Aye. Did you hear
Mr.
me?
Passios. Yes.
I quoted verbatim.
Yes. Mr. Passios. Aye. And Mr. Simeone.
Aye.
All right. Okay. Any further action on minutes from June 11th?
Okay, so June 11th is before Mr. Menard and I were on it, so we can't technically make a motion. It would have to be one of you.
That's
okay?
a fair point.
Yeah.
So this would require a vote by Mr. Henshaw, myself, Mr. Passios, and Mr. Simeone. Okay.
Yes.
And I honestly have not seen those minutes for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
Okay.
But
Would you prefer?
as
to
I say, my
postpone?
wife has been scattered
Would you
recently.
prefer to postpone this?
Did you just blame your wife?
No.
We end up blaming ourselves for not being able to keep up with our wives.
Okay. All right.
So are we gonna defer again on June 11th?
Oh my
Please.
gosh.
Okay, we're deferring on June 11th.
Okay, and they're in the OneDrive right now, though. So if you can't find them in your email, they're all in the
I will
OneDrive.
go.
Okay, and that one will stay in the ones to be reviewed, and the other ones will move into the approved one.
So
Okay.
okay, perfect. And
Okay.
I think that by I'm sorry, I'm having some Zoom issues here. I think that by using this and moving to putting them in the OneDrive and just informing everybody when they're posted there,
Yeah.
it'll be easier from an editing perspective.
Yes.
Just because, first of all, that word formatting that we've been using to
Ugh.
date, having spent a year with it, it's terrible.
It is.
I sympathize with your frustrations, Heather.
Okay.
That being said, as I said to you in an email earlier today, we overdo it when it comes to the requirements on minutes in this committee with respect to the open meeting law, and the bar from a requirements perspective is pretty low, and all of our meetings are recorded. So, there's no necessity to go well beyond. It's necessary to get the minutes done. That's really all it is.
All right.
And again, that's speaking for myself, but that's my view, having done it for a year. Pretty poorly, I might add.
Minutes are the official record.
Yeah,
Yes, they are.
that's the only. It's even though it's recorded, the minutes are what people. It's on file. So.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that I'm overdoing it right now.
But if we
And
can
so.
look- well, I beg your pardon.
No, go, John.
Oh, sorry. I talked over you, and I do apologize. If you look at the fundamental record of the meeting, it is in fact these videos. And if you look at the minutes, it's sort of a way to curate the videos so that the public gets a chance to access the part of the video they want to see. Then that would I think address one of my excesses, which is I'm one of the chief culprits on fetishizing the minutes, as it were. And so maybe what we can do is we can back away from that and make it more as a curation.
I mean, Chris's and Jay's points, I think, are well taken. The open meeting law says that the minutes are the official record of the meeting. I began about halfway through my tenure as secretary, linking to the YouTube video from the meetings.
Yep.
Just as an added, hey, this becomes part of the record because it's annotated in the minutes. So I think that, if there's an accuracy issue, if there's it'll ultimately get spelled out by somebody who wants to take a closer look. Okay.
So,
any further discussion on minutes?
So going forward, I'm going to send them to Chris and have him drop them in the folder.
You should be able to drop them in.
I should be able to drop them in the folder?
Yep.
Okay. And then send an email that they're in the folder.
Okay.
Okay.
And are we expected to comment live on that document, or are we expected to comment via email or some other message back to you?
I think if you just comment live on that document,
Okay.
that should work. It will work better, I think. Because then
Okay.
all the emails, like I said, I don't check that email all the time, and I still get junk. Like it's so full from school committee stuff.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. You should have gotten a new email address when you changed.
It's the same. It's the same Lunenburg online.
I know. All right.
John is he clapping?
Oh, wait,
or?
John, I'm sorry. Did you have a comment?
I do, please, but I can wait.
No, please.
Okay. Regarding comments on the minutes on the OneDrive, should we annotate them as, my initials or something so you know where it came from, or just change the text to our pleasure?
I believe when you're making a comment, it
will
is going to
show that.
record that it was you making it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but use the Microsoft Word comment. Okay.
It's a Google function, but it's the same idea. Yep.
That's the way I've been doing. Okay, good.
Yep.
I just have to, I'll have to learn another set of commands. Well, that's just Ducky. That should limit my contribution quite a bit. Maybe that.
John, just think of it as as an expansion of your skill sets, thanks to Finance Committee.
After I get done whining, I can think about it philosophically.
Jay, did you have a comment?
So, yeah, how do you do comments on the minutes in the OneDrive?
When you go into the document,
Pull it up. It has an edit.
Yeah.
When you go in there, you'll see it. Are you looking on it right now on your phone?
No. I can't do that.
Yeah. So then.
Did you see the edits I made in the ones that you sent?
Yes.
So
They
is
were
that
included.
okay?
Yeah, that was in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the only way I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Good. Well done.
Wait, there's John again.
John.
May I, one more thing, and that is to recognize that Heather has been absolutely brilliant at synthesizing minutes down. So I really appreciate that, having struggled unsuccessfully with the minutes for a year or two myself.
Well, thank you, John.
Good. All right. Any more discussion on minutes?
Oh, please be done.
We're moving on. Okay, we have an item here called budget history / discussion. And I will honestly admit, I have no idea what this is about. So does anybody recall why we asked Terry, or does anybody know why Terry put this on?
I thought she was going to lay out the timeline to get to.
For special town meeting, right?
Okay.
Well, either special town meeting or ultimately town meeting.
Town meeting,
Annual
okay.
town meeting.
Okay. So I would propose, if it's okay with everybody, that we just defer on this.
Yep.
We've gotten new meeting updates or what's happening in the next 2 meetings from Heather. And we'll move this to the next agenda when Terry is back.
Yep.
Okay. One note that I did take from from the discussion with Heather that I just want to make sure that I have agreement from the committee. I don't think it requires a vote, but is everybody okay with?
By all means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their budget.
Definitely.
Yeah, their
Their
fiscal
budget.
year 2021 budget.
And they'll have a meeting the day before.
So hopefully hopefully that's the meeting that they're going to do the stuff
Yeah.
at. I don't.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay. Okay. Committee report, Mrs. Soroka.
Yeah. So I met with the senior center director, and she she is doing well. They are doing well there financially. They have their budget is $5,000 in program lines, and they restarted their community engagement in August. They're limited to 10 people in the facility at a time when they have their like yoga and their all their events they've been doing. They got COVID grants for Community Foundation, $1,000, an agency for Aging Cares Act, $1,000, which they've been using for drive-through lunches on Wednesday, and $100 gift cards from Hannaford that they purchased so they could use it at a later date. They were reopening with lemonade and ice cream social on Friday afternoons. Grief support is monthly. Yoga chair, video Tuesday. They're doing bingo again. So it's really good to see that the seniors are being active again. Probably was a long stretch for them to be isolated. Now she has me on her program list. So I just got in the mail my 50 plus community news. I am over 50, so I could be participating in all of these, but they're having fire prevention week drive-through style. They have speakers coming in. Again, only 10 people get to go in the room. Brown bag lunch service on Thursdays, drive-through coffee shop on Tuesdays. So they're doing well. They did purchase new vinyl chairs, so they're easier to clean. And they got rid of all of the cloth ones and donated the chairs to Habitat for Humanity. So that was a good, that's good. So they want to start fitness, I think, in the TCP gym with pickleball is what she mentioned. So I don't know what's going on with that though. So, and that's what I have. So I will be bringing these beauties all the time.
I think we all received those, but that's a good report and worth
really?
mentioning.
Okay.
Yep. And
Yeah, these are great.
I'll tell you, if there's one thing that I've learned in a year and a half on this committee is that if there's one group in town that can
where'd he go?
do a lot with little, it's it's the Eagle House organization. They can really make it happen.
It's amazing. So, and that's all I have.
Any other committee reports? Mr. Passios.
Yep, I have three different committees to report on. I'll be as brief as I can. First of all, Parks has met since the previous meeting, which I'm sorry I was not able to attend the last Finance Committee meeting. TC Passios ran well into that meeting, and I felt it was important that I stay with that meeting at the time, and I'll report on that in just a moment. Parks Department, we did a brief discussion of the beach season. The beach closed on Sunday, September 13th. Kayla gave us an overview on participation and some of the numbers. The final, there's a few final numbers that need to come in before we have an idea as to how much beach operations cost for this year. We went into the season and opening the beach knowing that it would be a deficit year. We just didn't know how deeply it would be in deficit, and we don't quite have those numbers yet. We also had some extensive conversation on Marshall Park and the master plan. There will be a lot more said about that over the next few meetings. And we set our committee goals for the year. And unfortunately, I didn't jot the notes down for this evening. Marshall Park is one of them. Policy documents is another, and I forget the third. Chris might even remember. But anyway, that's a quick report on parks. Capital planning is also met this past Tuesday night. Basically, we went over the packets that are sent to the department heads, and the criteria sheets that we'll use to prioritize the projects later on in the process, and had a brief discussion about the deferred capital projects that we'll be bringing up at special town meeting. We did approve the packet, so they will be headed out to the department heads in the very near future, definitely by the 1st of October. And I believe they're expected to be back to the town manager by the end of October. So there's a fairly quick turnaround process there to get the next set of capital projects into the pipeline. Lastly, TC Pasio's building design committee. We are starting to get a better picture of the individual space breakdowns of the individual offices and spaces dedicated to different entities. There was an extensive discussion with the school committee doing a presentation on their concern was that there might have been a disconnect, and I'm not quite sure how this all occurred, but I think there's more needs than the school committee either had expressed or was taken into consideration when their space was being set up for the administrative offices. The student areas seem to be pretty much in the realm of what they need. There was some concern about the needs for private offices, so on and so forth. That's still a work in progress. There was a comment made by the superintendent at two open meetings, one ours and one at school committee, that if it appears that the needs of the administrative offices cannot be fulfilled in the TC Pasio's building, they might consider taking a look at moving those offices to some other location. And that's only if their concerns about private offices and so on and so forth cannot be worked out. And I think it was a very good working session in that respect. And the architects are going to respond to that by our next meeting. Discussion and traffic. Oh, we had a discussion with some of the specialists too from the architectural and engineering group in regards to the general physical plant systems of the building and what they need. And for the most part, you're looking at a complete reworking of most of those systems. And we discussed, we actually have a complete plot plan now also for the entire property. And we discussed possible traffic flow and parking possibilities, because they have not moved that part of the plan that far forward that they had anything to present to us, but we gave them some of the things that we'd like to see, some of the issues that could be problematic and be aware of, so on and so forth, and trying to mitigate the issue of traffic, the combined traffic of the middle high school and the traffic for TCP, and try to work that out so that they don't clash with each other at certain parts of the day. And we had some great conversations in that area. That's pretty much it. One other thing I wanted to say about TCP, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, and that is that our next meeting, we will be reviewing the deferred capital projects and voting some type of a recommendation for town meeting. I think we're doing it next meeting so that the recommendation is in the warrant. But one way or another, we will have a recommendation from that committee on the floor. And we are also going to be reviewing capital planning committee policy. One of the biggest things that a couple of us on the committee want to take a look at is the thought that it's time to increase the minimum dollar amount trigger for capital projects.
Mhm.
The number has not been changed in many, many years. And, what was a $10,000 project nowadays our feeling is that some of these smaller projects should be absorbed within the operating budgets of these departments when there's small amounts like that. Thank you. I'm sorry that extended out a little further than I planned.
Okay. Mr. Passio, is just a question on the building committee report.
Yep.
Has the committee discussed or revised or updated the timeline on this at all? I would imagine we're still tracking for some kind of proposal for Springtown meeting, but are we looking at, having some idea of a rough number on this at some point? I think our
we're
expectation
clearly,
was we would have some kind of visibility of this a month or two ago, and we still don't.
The
we're not
numbers, I'm not sure exactly when they're going to start surfacing, but I would expect that once we get into October, we will start to see some of the numbers. The physical plant improvements are pretty much a set given, so they'll be able to give us some pretty good numbers on those parts of it. It's the breakup of once you break up the gross spaces that we have set aside for each office and or entity, then obviously the fixtures and all the stuff that need to go into those individual spaces is going to be varied. So that number is going to be, rolled into it, I'm sure, late in the process. Our expectation is that probably by special town meeting, we're going to have, my expectation, let me put it that way, is that by special town meeting, we're going to be seeing substantially dependable numbers for at least major pieces of the project. Because what we want to be able to do is through the winter, involve the public in the discussion of, okay, here's the plan. This costs this, that, this piece costs this, so on and so forth, and start our outreach after special town meeting so that we've really advertised this whole project by Springtown meeting and see if we get a yay or nay. So that didn't give you a specific answer, but it's the best I can do.
Okay.
Dave, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Yep.
One of the things that the Capital Planning Committee is responsible for is providing a complete inventory of town property, real and personal. Is that on your agenda, or is that being handled solely by town manager or someone else?
I wanted to bring that up at the last meeting, but we lost our quorum, so I wasn't able to bring it up. There's an awful lot in the section that you're reading that, maybe it gets done by somebody, but it hasn't been done by Capital that I know of, unless John can tell us otherwise, for quite a long time. I agree. The inventory of buildings and it goes further than that. It's not just the physical buildings in ownership of the town. I think it's equipment. I think it's everything.
Hasn't been done for at least 5 years.
Okay.
An interesting topic.
And I've voiced my opinion, I believe, when we had the fire department and or DPW or both in during budget season last year, that, without a system of tracking the cost of repairs over the life of an asset, we can't really analyze what any individual asset has cost us over its life. And maybe if we had that historical data, we'd be either stretching the life of those vehicles out before we replace them or replacing them sooner based on the data. And there is no comprehensive data collection of that sort that I'm aware of, other than the basic services that are done at the DPW garage, anything that's hired out, especially by the fire department, because it's required specialty repairs. Yeah, there's a slip of paper in a file drawer somewhere, but that's all.
Mrs. Lemieux.
I just can add to the inventory. We did discuss an inventory with capital planning before in my tenures here. So
Was there a result of that? I tend to remember a
it's
couple years
basically
back.
Yeah.
the inventory of assets.
Right.
So buildings, computer inventory, or IT inventory.
But is that list exist somewhere that's accessible?
Would have to look at when it was last updated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something that we want to revisit in a future meeting?
Yeah.
I think it's more of a capital planning committee.
Yeah, it's part of capital planning's charge
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's why.
under the bylaw.
Okay. Fair enough. Any other committee reports?
Yeah, I have one. So it's actually open space, which I guess falls under planning. So maybe I'm responsible for that. But I did watch their meeting this past week. They talked about several properties, including the one that is on the warrant. Like I said earlier, I think they came to a very good win-win solution on that, or a good solution for the town if we can follow through with it. But in addition, they talked about all of the municipal lands and taking a look across all of the interested boards and committees on who might be interested in that land and whether that land should, be repurposed to the, say from Board of Selectmen to parks or Board of Selectmen to school or school to parks, whatever it is, based upon that look of where we're actually using municipal land. So that's an action forthcoming from an open space perspective, and this, definitely a financial impact dependent upon what the intended use of those properties are, or if they are recommended to be sold off. So just something folks may want to monitor and watch and see from an open space committee.
Thank
I
you.
think that's all I had for that.
Any other committee reports? Okay, I did attend both school committee meetings last week. There was a very long school committee meeting last Wednesday and a very short school committee meeting on Saturday. The long school committee primarily dealt with the reopening of school, and there were extensive presentations that were given by the building principals about all things school reopening and safety and course of educational school day and busing and you name it. And there was also a fairly extensive presentation on curriculum and the professional development that occurred during the time frame of the delayed school opening. So basically what happened was teachers went back to work at the prescribed date the week before Labor Day, but school didn't actually reopen until last Wednesday. So there was nearly a 3-week period of preparation and professional development in preparation for what is obviously a very different style of education than what we've experienced anywhere in history. And there was a really good overview of some of the technologies in particular that are being leveraged, new educational resources, web-based stuff, and how that begins to come together through lesson plans and curriculum. So it's pretty interesting. From a budgetary standpoint, Mr. Cassidy did do an overview of a closeout report for the fiscal year 2020. As well as a personnel report that outlined all of the new hiring that has occurred over the course of the last couple of months. And as I mentioned earlier, he is preparing a closer look at the current fiscal year and line item transfers and an overview of where money is being spent and not being spent as a result of many of the changes that have occurred. There was an item that was voted on during the Wednesday meeting that turned out to be an open meeting issue. It wasn't posted on the agenda properly, which they wound up taking up on Saturday, which related to that Zoom meeting position that Heather spoke of earlier today, which they did approve on the Saturday meeting. And the last point, which I think is worth mentioning, and you probably saw it on social media or in the Lunenburg Ledger or in the Sentinel, the superintendent reported a potential critical shortage with respect to custodial positions. They're down several positions, and that may prove to be a problem. Any questions or comments relative to my report?
Did anyone look at outsourcing that custodial, or is it allowed to be outsourced based on unions?
That's a
I
very
don't
good
know.
question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to it.
Outsourced.
They didn't have a solution.
Well,
No.
I can tell you that I think part of it, and I know just from, as Mr. Passios likes to say, word on the street,
Word on the street.
is I think that there have been some applications submitted as a result of that publicity. So
Oh, good.
we shall see.
Well, people want their kids in school. They don't want to go all remote. Because that's what she said.
Right. So,
Right.
but I don't know I obviously don't know what the outcome will be.
Peter.
Okay, Mr.
Peter?
Henshaw.
You mentioned new school hiring. I got the impression it was a fair amount. Was it replacements or additions?
Both.
Both.
And so I actually have a report somewhere on my desktop that'll just kind of give you an overview. I'll just give it to you really briefly here. So this is the report that Mr. Cassidy submitted to the school committee, including resignations, of which there were 6, new hires / promotions, of which there were 8.
Okay.
So there are obviously a couple of new positions. I can tell you that there also has been some shuffling of administrative roles as a result of some of the needs associated with the hybrid learning model, as well as some late resignations that occurred. And there are some temporary positions that have been created. So, for example, that school psychologist position is I believe, a temporary position. They have a district-wide COVID coordinator position that's sort of taking responsibility for all COVID-related activity, who is a promoted school nurse. And so some of that, I believe I don't know if it's been articulated, but it's certainly been implied that a lot of that will snap back after the current crisis is passed.
I was getting at whether or not their total personnel budget had increased, or if they were replacing, say, retirees with people who are drawing the salary.
Well, I think, as you know, Mr. Henshaw, you're always trying to replace your retirees with replacements that cost less.
Yes.
And that's a common budgetary benefit that occurs over the summer months in school department budgets. We've seen it historically over and over again. So I would imagine that there's some of that going on. But I couldn't say with any degree of specificity. I think that will be hopefully something they can report on at one of our subsequent meetings when we have them.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, any other comments or questions relative to report?
Yes, I had a question for David.
Yes, Jay, please. You're not coming in real loud, Jay, so.
Sorry. David, do you know why the meeting, the capital plan meeting September 9th wasn't recorded?
I
Dave, did you-
honestly don't know. I wasn't aware of that, to tell you the truth, unless nobody clicked record.
Yeah,
Are
because I
you
was
saying
looking
it's
for
not
it. It
up
wasn't
on?
on YouTube. And I asked Joe at PAC about it and said it looked like somebody had started, but there was only like 6 minutes and then there's nothing. So said there was no meeting recorded.
Heather, you were there for that meeting, weren't you? Town manager?
Yes, I was, and PAC was looking into that, and there is only a 9-minute recording of that meeting, so I'm not sure what happened because it was being recorded.
Yeah, I thought I usually watch for that in all meetings.
Yep.
Was it simulcast on Facebook? Does anybody know?
I'd have to go back and look at the
Does
agenda.
Facebook, yeah, I mean, Facebook does make a recording when they do that. You know, it lands on that page too. So maybe it's there. Good thing they keep minutes.
Aha, there you
Well, that's my next question. Do we know when the minutes will be available?
go.
Well, at the moment, we don't have a clerk or a vice chair, so,
Mhm.
Oh no, and they don't have a video to go back to.
right.
But the chair,
I think,
that he kept track of minutes.
yeah,
Oh, the chair.
I
Oh,
think
so Damon,
especially
okay.
for that meeting, Damon
Oh,
kept
thank
notes.
God. All right. Oh.
All right.
That board is fully populated now, right?
I think
Yes,
so.
it is. Yep.
Yeah.
More or less. Can we put it that way, Heather?
Yeah.
We have one member who has not attended either meeting so far, so we're trying to find out what's going on with that.
Okay.
Oh.
And
Is
one
there
other
any,
thing,
Jay, please.
one more.
More.
The documents that you're sending out to the departments for a capital request, where are those going to be available to look at when they come back?
That would be a Heather answer. I'm not sure they are available until they become projects under capital planning, but I'll let Heather answer.
So they'll be filling out Google Sheets for the projects. So they can be, say, if at any point you had a question on something, we can share the information.
Well, this took place of what used to be the Form A, B, C, D.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been using Google Sheets for a couple of years.
All right, I'm not familiar with that, but yes, I'd like to be able to review them. Because you used to be able to look at the forms, but they're not available anymore.
Yeah, we can at different points, but they're until everything, all the information in the sheet is finalized, it would be fluid.
But if the documents are being discussed at a public meeting, you should be able to request them.
Yep.
And get them in as they appear.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, moving along. Public comment. Any public comment from the board?
Nope.
Any public comment from the public?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
thank you. My comments are first about the grants, and specifically a heads up, I think, specifically for the police and the IT. That the police, I'm sure. There's laws that we have to follow and that sort of thing, and as they say, the devil's in the details. And I can see that a whole operating presentation needs to be made in terms of how many days you have to keep the camera stuff, and I mean it's a whole host of different things, and I'm not explaining it right. But the bottom line is that I think we need to have an idea what the total costs will be, notwithstanding the fact that we're getting grants to offset the cost, and who's going to be responsible, et cetera, et cetera. Some time ago, the Finance Committee talked about doing an analysis of the maximum debt limit for the town, and I wondered what the status of that project was. And those are the only two comments that I have. Thank you.
So, Mr. Rogers, I'll address your second question. It's gone a little slower than I anticipated.
Sure.
Principally because just number one, time available. We have only met once, and we need to get that thing back on track. But also the delay in landing on a number for the TCP project it's kind of like the biggest, most important number relative to that project. That's not to say that this isn't an entirely serial process and we can't do other activity in parallel. But that is a pretty big nut right there, and
Sure.
and we need to figure that out. So
Yep.
what I expect is I'll request that get added to our next agenda. Is that we will get that back on track. There will not be a report at the special town meeting, but we will have something to circulate for comment and discussion as the TCP project is discussed more broadly and advertised as a proposal, and then be able to report at Springtown meeting.
Okay, I understand that, and that certainly is valid, but I look at it from a different perspective. And my perspective is there has to be some sort of a number that we can come up with within the town that says, when it's all said and done, this is how much we can realistically expect to be able to fund in terms of debt, and then you backfill it. So if we wait for the TC Passios number to come through, it could be a heck of a long time. So it's kind of like when you go and get qualified for a house. You know, they do this arithmetic computation that says, okay, this is what you can afford, and that's really what I think I'm looking for. And then we'll fill it in afterwards in terms of what the expenditures are. Because not only do we have the Passios, we have this and talk about the Turkey Hill Middle School, and the bane of my existence is what happens if we do the Passios renovation. What happens to the buildings that are vacated? How much does that cost? That kind of thing. So
Yep.
that's what I have in mind.
Yeah, I take your comments, and I agree to a certain extent. We do have an existing debt policy, and the way that I intended to come at this was to actually look at it from both angles and look at both the bottom up, the anticipated costs, so to speak, as well as the spending capacity. And
Sure.
I agree, and we will pursue both.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this situation with you. One last thing. My wife Karen has filled out a form so that the town school department will consider hiring me as a janitor for no pay, and from 2 in the afternoon till 3 in the morning. And I don't support this, but if that's rumors and it's around, you can just tear it up, because I'm not going to do that.
I will be there with a video camera, Mr. Rogers.
Bye. Thank
It's
you.
always good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Any other public comment? Hearing none.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Town manager. Madam Town
I just
Manager.
had a quick addition to the body cameras. The question about storage costs. Part of the grant is to pay for the storage unit for the data. If that helps.
Yeah, I think, you know, to Mr. Rogers' point, there's and I think you had alluded to this in your email back to me a few weeks ago. There's clearly a policy that needs to be written, which probably exists in many other departments, which we can take guidance from. And you know, union considerations and a bunch of other things that this is not
Those are
small
all
potatoes.
part of the conversation. I just want to
Yep.
address the question that came up
Yep.
about the cost to the storage.
Do the vehicles have cameras?
Yes. I believe so.
So they're gonna need training.
It's an
for the
interesting data
body
point.
cameras?
Yeah.
Mr. Simeone asked, is there a training requirement associated with body
Yes, there
cameras?
would be
Yes, there is
training
as well.
associated with it.
And how is that being paid for? Or funded?
TBD, I would imagine.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, next meetings. We will meet at 7 p.m., I'm assuming on October 8th, to discuss special town meeting articles and other budgetary related topics.
Also, you were going to invite the school committee or the super. Are you inviting them?
So I will send an email to Terry
Okay.
following this meeting.
Yep.
And apprise her on our conversation and let her take action on that.
Okay.
And we'll be meeting on October 15th, where we will be, is that the public hearing?
Yep.
Heather? So that will be the public hearing and we'll be voting on town meeting articles. Any questions or further discussion before I take a motion for adjournment?
The only question I have is when can we expect to see the town meeting articles so that we can review them prior to the October 15th meeting? Heather, that's you, right?
The warrant closes on Tuesday, so not until
Okay.
Tuesday.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
But
great.
with enough time to review them all.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they'll have to go through council review.
Okay.
So they may not be in exact format as, but they should be
Close.
ready by then.
Okay. Thank you.
Good.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn at 8:38 p.m.
We have a
I
motion to
second that.
adjourn. Second by Mr. Henshaw. Any discussion?
Nope.
Roll call vote. Mr. Henshaw,
Aye.
Mr. Menard,
Right?
Mrs. Soroka,
Aye.
Mr. Passios,
I'm
Mr. Simeone,
Aye.
and an aye for me. We